And I want to say thank you to everybody. Welcome to the session today. Excuse me. Perfect. Just as I start recording, I need to cough. I'm going to hand you over to Gary and Jeff. Really looking forward to this session, guys. Really am looking forward to this session, and looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us about AI-powered learning transformation. So, Gary, Jeff, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us here today, Andrew. Can you hear me okay? Just want to make sure my audio is working before I start saying
Perfectly.
all the best
Absolutely
things.
perfectly, Jeff.
Gary, you there?
I'll test mine while I'm at it too.
All right, we're off to a good start. So thank you all for coming. I'm really excited to present this topic today with our partner AICPA and talk about the learning kind of transformation they've gone over in the last, what has it been, about a year and a half now? I've been live almost a year, Gary.
Yeah, I think it's been about that long.
Talk through how we used AI as part of that transformation, how it kind of was game changing to some of the capabilities of things we wouldn't even dreamed we were able to do when we started this project, but being able to adapt kind of as we started off once we kicked off was kind of key. We're going to talk a lot today around learning ecosystems because that is what AICPA did deploy. So our first kind of interactive question to wake up anyone in the US that's here or after lunch lulls is curious what people's thoughts are, kind of what are the key components for a learning ecosystem that you might have deployed, or maybe a dream ecosystem that you're thinking about deploying. Curious to see what kind of people are thinking about. And of course, we're going to share what AICPA did here in a couple minutes.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeff.
it's interesting.
And yeah, I was going to say, so thank you guys. And what I'd like people to do, so the audience, we've opened up a nice big chat box for you. I see James is already typing in there. James Woodward, thank you very much. What do you believe are the key components for a learning ecosystem? So it's more than just an LMS. I think we've gone past that now, perhaps. So I see Jeff is smiling. What do you think is the learning ecosystem? Please do let us know your comments. And I see we've got Chris has already put something in there. Learner journey, says Chris.
Gary, look at that. They're reading your slides ahead of time somehow.
I was just going to say I think they got an advanced copy of the deck. It's funny when I saw this slide, I was thinking about how I would have answered this before we started working together, and it's hard for me to think back that far what my answer would have been to this.
Yeah, culture,
We've got
technology, some good stuff in there.
couple of comments. Two people have already mentioned personalization. So Bev and Stephen are mentioning personalization.
Great. We're going to talk some about how we're using AI to help with that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Carl. I've waited for data. Data is always the important one. It's getting the data out the back end. It's the bit that we tend to forget in too many parts of ecosystems.
Clear ROI, all kinds of good stuff. All right.
That could be a separate presentation, ROI.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Business
Excellent.
driven.
Any more? We've got a couple of people adding things in. We've got a couple in the central chat as well. Trevor's identified collaboration tools.
Yeah, good idea.
So interesting, yeah. The different tools that exist within there, and Bijana has had a holistic approach, which I think is a really important point. Bijana, yeah, that it's not just about learning; it's how it integrates with other parts of the work system as well.
This is great. And Trevor, thanks for being here. Good to see or hear from you. Trevor and I were colleagues at one point at LTG. So always good to see familiar names. It's a small world.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to close the chat window down now for that one, but please do continue putting your comments in the learning eco or within the central chat. Interesting to hear your comments.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. That was a great way to kind of kick off. So we are going to give a little bit of introductions on kind of who the association or AICPA is, kind of what their background was on the challenge. We're going to talk through the journey and some of the decisions we made along that. We're going to share the outcome and results. So we got a little ROI in there for sure. And then we're going to talk about how we use kind of AI to help assist in that process and how we're thinking about continuing to use it, because you can't give a presentation in L&D in the L&D world right now without talking about generative AI in some way, shape, or form. So we'll share definitely how we're taking advantage of that. And please, we welcome any questions, comments, challenges, thoughts on that too in the chat or in the question and answer panel. So I guess we should have introduced ourselves before we started talking, but let me introduce myself, Gary, and then I'll hand it to you to talk a little bit about it, because then you're going to go right into the association side of it. So, hi everyone. My name is Jeff Fissel. I serve as the Vice President of Solutions, a very ambiguous and fun title, across the Learning Technologies Group. So, work across a lot of the different brands there, and I get to help customers and partners like Gary figure out and talk through a lot of these kind of technical I don't want to say opportunities, and craft solutions around there. So I'm, again, very honored and excited to have Gary here with me today. Gary, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Thank you so much, Jeff. My name is Gary Lamach. I'm Director of Learning, Consulting, and Strategy for the AICPA and CIMA. For those of you that don't know, CIMA for our UK audience usually resonates a little more. For the AICPA, the AICPA is a membership organization that is for certified public accountants in the United States. We were established around 1887. We set the ethical standards for the profession, auditing standards for private companies and nonprofit organizations. We also develop and grade the uniform CPA examination, which is required for licensure in the United States. To maintain that license, you are also required to maintain 40 credits of continuing professional education. Much of what I do is developing products that resonate within the industry and within the profession to provide that CPE requirement, but also to advance the profession. One of those things that we did to advance the profession was we created a joint ventureship in 2011 with CIMA, went into effect in 2017. Through that, we offered the CGMA designation, which was for management accounting. So the AICPA focuses primarily on public accounting. CIMA focuses on management accounting. And what we found is that the skills that are required between these two organizations to advance the profession, we needed to marry them a little better. So what we were able to do through this partnership was really, we're not only informing the public of where we see the profession heading, be it digital transformation, finance transformational topics that we're using right now, the advent of virtual and fractional CFOs in the market. We really gain relevant insights from all of our disparate audiences. Those audiences, as I said, include public accounting and management accounting, but it also includes a lot of business and industry partnerships. We partner closely with large firms, the top 500 firms in the country, the big four. We partner with a lot, but we also partner with a lot of companies looking to upskill their finance functions, be it training entry-level employees from basic bookkeeping to more advanced accounting skills, or transitioning finance teams into a more finance business partner role within their organization. And as we see this transition moving forward, what I would like to ask you is, in your current ecosystem, how many clicks do learners have to click to get to your content?
It's going to be a fun
terrible
one.
I corrected the spelling in this slide earlier on today and realized there's still another spelling error. Isn't that terrible? I'm so sorry, guys.
This slide is going to get us. It just proves we're all human, and that it wasn't written by AI.
Yeah, AI would have done a much better job on this slide.
It would have done a better job. Gary, one thing there on one of the slides I always like to call out as we're waiting here, like, you guys have 650,000 members globally that this ecosystem touches, and that you're responsible for training. Like, that is a massive quantity of users and population in different areas. So if people missed that small number that was there, I just wanted to make sure we call that out, because that plays into like the breadth of the challenge that we all had kind of going into this.
Yeah, and it's not only the ecosystem that it touches, it's the amount of content that's required to meet all the needs of those disparate audiences. We have membership regionally across the globe, and everybody needs a little something different, right, to upskill and provide that personal journey.
Yeah,
I'm seeing some great answers in the chat here.
3 to 2, 3, 5. This isn't too bad. I was just at a conference a couple days ago, earlier this week, and people were way higher than this. So we have a progressive group on here.
It's interesting looking at the response. I was going to say, it's interesting looking at the responses because they seem to be split in two parts. It's like 2 to 5, it's not too bad, or everybody else is way too many. So
right,
it seems to be lots and lots. And
yeah, I'd be interested when I see the 2 to too many there. I'm wondering what too many is, because as I go back to the last slide, I think that was far too many.
I think I think too many is relative. I think it's relative to commercial applications. It's the consumer applications. If I can do something on Amazon, I can do something on Netflix, I can do something on Google within 3 clicks. Why can't I do the same for my learning approach? And I think that's where we fall down in the learning perspective, because we just don't realize how easy consumer tech and consumer products are for people to use now.
Yeah, well, it's about removing and reducing friction when it comes down to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome stuff. Apologies, everybody, again. My cat has decided to join me again today. So if all of a sudden we get some strange messages appearing in the chat, or you hear very loud purring, that will be Asher Boo, who's decided to join the session today. So apologies, everybody.
Well, no, it's not remnants from the champagne last night, Andrew.
Absolutely. It's definitely not the champagne.
Gary, you going to share what you started with here?
Yeah, so our store experience from purchasing our product to beginning the course was roughly about 7 clicks to get where we were. 7 clicks.
Better. We know we can do better.
Right. And we knew we could do better. And we did do better. So Jeff, why don't we tell them how we did better?
Yeah, let's well, we're going to cheat and say that's one of the results we're going to share, that we did do better than that. We'll give the exact number a little later. So when we kind of think through the journey of when we started tackling migrating the association, you guys were on a legacy system for almost a decade, I believe, that had been customized. So there was lots of customization to it, which had left you in a place of kind of, I don't want to say feeling trapped, but you limited ability to really kind of upgrade or take advantage of some of the newer things that were out there. So when we started talking with you all, and you all came to us about this too, there were kind of, I'll say, 3 key drivers or areas of drivers we wanted to focus on. One was usability, that first one. How can we reduce the time it takes for people to get to content? And how can we design this in a way that non-L&D stakeholders can use it? I don't need a degree to administer the LMS or figure things out in the LMS, because one of your audiences, that you guys call it your B2B audience, but they have they administer a component of the learning themselves to their audience, and these are just accountants. They can't be expected to know how to go assign learning in an LMS, so it had to be easy enough that they could do that, or the platforms that were deployed had to be easy enough to do that. You guys are a revenue generating organization, so we had to increase revenue as part of this too. So we wanted to make sure we were enforcing licensing in a new way, giving you creativity to how you create new license bundles, and then the speed of being able to do that. If a salesperson got creative and wants to sell something, they need to have the ability to go deploy and deliver that versus it being constrained just for a fixed number of that. And then to the earlier part, the future proofing, like things are evolving. Like generative AI wasn't a thing when we started our conversation, but it is very much a thing right now. So someone called out me for saying just accountants. Accountants are amazing. Sorry. If anyone's an accountant on this call, I have some in my family as well. But we had to make sure that as we designed this ecosystem, that it was ready for the things that we didn't even know were coming, and that we have the ability to easily kind of plug those components in. So we've answered a little bit of this, but kind of want to hit this like home real hard of like why we chose an ecosystem approach over a single bespoke kind of custom platform again. Because there can be some value in those for sure. One, there wasn't one platform that just met all the needs. So there wasn't, for the complexity of the use case, there wasn't just a single off-the-shelf product that existed, which meant that the option was either an ecosystem or a custom solution. And we were really favoring the ecosystem approach. There was a desire to invest in off-the-shelf products because of that experience. So the commercial roadmaps, the innovation that comes from the vendor, even as a vendor, the lack of vendor lock, like to be able to swap that out, being very standards oriented so that you could do that. You leverage XAPI and all the different learning standards that exist, using publicly available APIs, all that kind of good stuff. There's different stakeholders at different levels. So not everyone needed access to everything. The content team might have needed access to the content servers. Other people might need access to the LMS. So being able to kind of break that out. I think I saw in the first question, reporting was a key component. And that also is a very key component here of making sure we can measure not just completion rates, but those behavior rates within the system, what people are searching for, what the question level detail is they're interacting with, because that's how Gary and his team are able to create better content. Like the most completed course is probably not the one they're diving into, but when they're looking into like common questions people are getting wrong and really the behavioral analytics within those courses, I'm speaking for him and he'll talk more about it. Like that insight gives you the ability to create so much more compelling content than traditional, say, kind of big four metrics. And flexibility for the future, open standards, APIs, opportunity to use API or AI, and the ability to swap out and plug in new technology when it's relevant. So we wanted to make sure we kind of designed this system in a way that was very future-proof and scaled with the association. Gary, anything you want to kind of add in here? I know I put a couple words in your mouth, but hopefully you agree.
Yeah, no, they were good words. They were good words, so I'm happy to chew on them, Jeff. When we really talk about stakeholders at different levels and the components, it really speaks to the global nature of our association. It's been hard for us to kind of like localize our content in a way that was meaningful with our legacy systems. And moving to a more flexible system really gave us that ability to pilot new products and new topics and productization in a different way, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to really meet the needs of stakeholders at where they are.
Absolutely. All right. So without further ado, kind of where we started was kind of three technical components to making this ecosystem work. One was a product from Rustasy Software called Content Controller that centralized content management and license management. So this allowed you to that generate more revenue component, to enforce licensing, whether it was in your system or in other people's systems, and kind of the creativity of managing that. We used the learning management system of Bridge, which is kind of a multi-tenanted, really focused on ease of use. So I would say on the simpler side, like designed for non-L&D people to use, do learning and development there. And then the GP team built an integration platform or kind of plugin to go along with this, because we had data flowing in and out of these systems in so many places. And we used an integration platform there to, via APIs and all standards-based approaches, nothing custom, to be able to move things around, get data between the different systems, and do some of the customizations that the association needed without having to customize any of those core products. So that became kind of really key to what we did. And here's a very high level sort of ecosystem diagram of what we looked at. If we start on the left, all the content, all the e-learning content got loaded directly into Rustasy Content Controller, which allowed us to distribute to other people's LMSs or our own. We had the ability to spin up all these B2B portals using Bridge. We also had a portal that was integrated directly to the storefront that was there. You'll see an integration with a digital credentialing platform, a live events platform, a database of record for CPE and tracking and all of those kind of components. There's lots of fun arrows here going lots of different directions. I think when we uploaded this, I don't know why some of the arrows look like they turned the wrong direction. Those ones that are going up and down should be going right and left. I'll blame Adobe Connect there. But you can imagine how these things all start to connect together. And happy to share this in more detail with people if they want to kind of dive in. We have way more sophisticated diagrams that we drew out as part of this with lots more flowy lines. But at a high level, this is kind of the components. And to me, this isn't overly complex. Like we tried to start with a simple approach with the ability to start to plug in components as we needed. But they're really kind of just two off-the-shelf core components, layering in some of those integration layers on top of that. All right. Let's kind of drum roll to some of the results here. So, Gary, I'll give you the honor of advancing the slide to the results if you'd like here.
I'd love for some people to put in the chat what they think the results are. So if we started with 7, where do you think that we got to? And I'll give everybody a minute there just to do that.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, people putting it all in the bottom. 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2.
No one's got it right yet.
1.
Oh, there. Oh,
Diana says 1. There we go. Oh, and now Martin says 1, and everybody's gonna say 1.
Everyone's gonna say it, gave it away.
So from store to launching your course, we're now at 1 click. And the user experience on this component of our integration has been overwhelmingly positive. It's given people the ability to look for what they want, and move right into the course. Seamless integration. I mean, we all know, especially with a profession that's looking at 40 continuing education hours a year, or CPD in the UK, we don't have time, right? We don't have time for 7 clicks, right? And it frustrates your experience to start with, when you're accessing this, whether it be compliance training or whether you're really looking to upskill your profession and into a new role.
Yeah. So this to me was taken via deep links, and also I would say inspired by Amazon, a consumer product. Andrew, you were talking about that earlier, like the 1 click to buy. I have the ability here in the store to click 1 click buy, and it will launch directly to that. And part of the idea was we almost wanted the LMS to feel headless, that the user didn't know they were even in the LMS. They were just launching the content that they took from the store. And when they're done, they can go back to the store or go back into the LMS to find what they need. But it felt like a seamless experience. And before it was integrated, but it was more of you bought it, the enrollment transferred over, you logged into the LMS, you saw your enrollments, you clicked to enroll, then you confirmed the enrollment, and then you launched it, and a lot of those extra steps that were there. And we added some auto enrollment rules here and deep linking capabilities and made sure those all lined up. So the second that person bought it, they had the ability to launch it without any effort. So Lisa's from GP calling this out, but yeah, people didn't want to log into an LMS. They wanted to get to the learning content, and that was really what we focused on. All right. Any questions? Let's take a pause here around the ecosystem of what we deployed, what we did there, before we jump into some of the future AI stuff, because I know we can spend a lot of time there, but curious if anyone has any questions for Gary about that experience, things that happened there. I see a couple people typing, so we'll give it a second.
Yeah, while we're waiting for that, there's when we look at Dropbox as a case study, there's a really great quote that I love, that when they moved from the user interface of when you had to upload your files, but then the Dropbox, you could put the Dropbox file on your desktop, and then that process was immediate, right? So that it went from 1 click to 0. And the quote was, the distance between 1 and 0 is infinite. And I absolutely love that quote. And that's what I feel like we did here, right? Like the distance from 7 to 1 has completely changed our user experience in such an amazingly dramatic way that allows us to focus on the future that we're moving into now.
I've got a question for you two guys. So I was thinking about this. I wonder if is there something sector specific here? Because you've got accountants, you've got people who are short of time, you've got people who are billing effectively from a time perspective. Is there a sector issue, or is it something that will work across other sectors? Would we see, for example, baristas, people who've got a more skills related job rather than knowledge related job? Would we see this in other sectors, do you think, the same way?
This specific interface, I think, could be universal for any
Okay.
industry, really. Yeah.
I agree. I think people still want that simplicity of getting to no one's ever said they wanted to LMS something ever. But every day we go to Google and YouTube and look up how to do things. I think that behavior is similar, and that people go to the place they want to find the knowledge. And if content from your LMS happens to be in that place, you're doing it right, because they're getting it and they're consuming that learning versus making them feel like they have to go somewhere else. We have a question about an LRS, which is an interesting one. So Gary, you can talk about it some too. So both Content Controller and Bridge actually have an LRS in them. They actually use the Rusty Engine LRS in the background, and we're keeping those in sync with all the statements that are there. And each of those products has its own reporting interfaces that go with it. Now, we are considering and talking about plugging in like a learning analytics platform like a Watershed to potentially be able to visualize that and bring things together. But the association currently is using Power BI and some other tools. So we're actually just taking advantage of the capabilities that are there for some of the visuals, I'll say cross-platform visualizations that exist. But it's built, the ecosystem is built that we could easily plug in any kind of learning analytics platform on top of that, because we've standardized how they're communicating, the learning analytics that are happening on the background, and they're all actually using the same LRS that's built into Rusty Engine.
The question from Edwin is a good one. I think it's just as you see many companies struggle to take that first step in digital transformation. I mean, it's fear, but it's also, as Jeff alluded to earlier, close to 700,000 members rely on us regularly. So we needed to make sure that we got this one right. And just moving forward. So that path forward was just making sure that all of our stakeholders, from the smallest single member, had a pleasant experience moving into this to our largest corporate partner, and making sure that we could make that transition seamless for everybody. That was really kind of the longest headwind that we were
There was
facing.
a lot of change management that went into this, doing this right. It's always a component whenever people ask me what the hardest bit of doing an ecosystem is. It's actually not the technology. Like there's a lot of really smart people that can transform ones and zeros and get them from one place to another. The teaching the people the new system, the change that went around that is always the most complicated in my opinion. And the thing that people like myself, I'm a technology person, kind of forget sometimes and don't focus on. And I think this reinforced that as well. Like luckily we did focus on that. And I think that helped make sure this was successful. And we're continuing to learn as we go. Like it's a continual partnership.
It's especially, I was going to say, it's especially relevant this week. So I saw the Learning and Work Institute in the UK. They put out a survey this week which looks at the use of technology to support learning, and it's scary numbers in there. Which is, only 3 in 10, 31% of people who respond to the survey are confident using online platforms to learn. So 1 in 3. Now that's really scary. Yeah. Because people are used to 7 clicks and 5 clicks and so on. People don't feel confident. So anything that's going to ease that confidence is going to help that change management piece, Jeff. I think.
Yeah, I agree. Making it feel more comfortable,
Yeah,
like the consumer tools that we use today. All
absolutely.
right, so let's get into some of the fun AI stuff. We promised, we put AI on our title. We promised we were going to talk about it. Andrew promised us there'd be people here that have lots of opinions and thoughts on AI. So definitely want to talk about at least one specific use case here that was really relevant to helping improve the user experience of the ecosystem that we deployed. So one of the before we kind of jump in there, I'm curious, like how is this group? How are people using some of the new generative AI tools today? That might be I use ChatGPT to read my emails and make sure they're they're right. I'm creating learning content. I'm using tools like Colossa and Synthesia to create new videos. I'm curious where this audience sits in kind of the use of generative AI today.
I think that's a great question, Jeff, and I think it's absolutely right to ask also which tools people are using, because you say generative AI, everybody thinks, oh, it's ChatGPT, but actually it's so much more than that. So, and we've got informed audience. We have an informed. Look at the numbers. Look at the responses coming through now. See,
There we
I told you
go.
this. I did tell you. We have people who understand
You
this stuff. Yeah, we
promised
got
me.
people who do. Although we have got. I love that from Bev. We're not.
Yeah, that's fair too.
And Sophia says nothing yet as well. So there are people who aren't using it. But yeah, interesting that there's some interesting comments already going through.
Yeah, it's great. This is constrained. Yeah, like that's not you're not alone in the constrained part of it. And one of the things we'll share here is I'll call it a low consequence use case of AI, and that's one we kind of tackled first, where we weren't dealing with PII, where we weren't dealing with crazy confidential information. We weren't doing stuff that like had a super high risk, and I think that's what allowed it to kind of advance some of the ways it has. Course outlines, course content. I think I saw Synthesia in there. Beyond, all great tools. Awesome. This is great. All right. So we have some people that are using it, and no worries if you haven't. Hopefully, we'll spur some kind of creative thinking here about it. I'm going to share some of the prompts and things we used. If it's hard to read, please feel free to reach out. We can give you a link. We're happy to send you these slides and these prompts as well, so you can kind of play with it. Yeah, authoring tools are building stuff in too. The Gomos, Elucidats, Easy Generator, Devler, and Articulate launched their new features too. So the prompt to course capability is definitely something that we will all probably be using within the next calendar year for sure. It's just
And
going to become a core capability of these products.
for people in the audience, if there's tools on here that you've not heard of before, I'll leave this up just for another 10 seconds or so, just so you can look at and go, all right, I don't need this one, I don't know that one. Just copy the ones that you want and make a note of them for yourselves just before I close this window down. Because what I don't want to do is close this window down and then everybody goes, oh, I didn't see that one. What was this one that people use, kind of thing. So
yeah, we can send a list. Lisa, on the GP side, we actually have a list of tools that we're happy to share with you. We've been kind of vetting them and have thoughts on them, and it's free. It's on our website, so we can send you kind of anyone that wants some information on some of the tools that some of our customers are using. We're starting to pull that together. We have a AI resource center.
Super, and we'll link to that at the end of the session. Excellent, thank you.
No problem. All right. There it goes back in here. So let's talk about where we started here, the opportunity. So as part of a migration, one of the things we realized was the association had a lot of courses, actually way more than 3,000. But when we were focused on kind of the top sellers, kind of the core components, there was a library of 3,000 SCOs, eLearn hour-long, click next e-learning courses that existed out there. And that content had outdated descriptions and learning objectives. They were created at the time that they were created, which sometimes wasn't as relevant. They were missing some new metadata that was available in the LMS, like the ability to have categories and tags or tie it to a skill taxonomy that exists, which made it very hard to find, discover, and recommend content. we found initially we had it only tagged to like the NASBA fields of study, which is great. Like, but you click on like finance or something, and then you had 300 courses to choose from. It wasn't that helpful. I think one of the things Netflix did beautifully well is its kind of micro tagging concept of, we know that Gary doesn't just like crime dramas. He likes crime dramas with strong female British leads. And now it's going to start to recommend. He does, yes. Very specific content. And I think the same thing applies in the learning world too, of making sure people are getting to the content that's most relevant to them. And this was one of those tasks that we really, really did not want to ask some poor person to go click next on a bunch of hour-long SCOs and build this out manually. So we felt like it was a great job to ask our AI friends to do with us. So here's what we did. There's a lot on this slide, and again, we're happy to share it with you all too. The first thing we realized was we needed to deconstruct the content that existed there, all those hour-long SCORM files that were there. So we built some tooling that went through the SCORM file, went through page by page. It stripped out any code, styling, and kind of got down to the core text. If there was any audio or video files in there, it did auto speech to text on those to generate transcripts and caption files. And then we actually used AI, GPT, the GPT API here, so GPT-4, to normalize and clean that core content to store it. Because one of the things about AI that's sometimes overlooked is you think you can just throw a bunch of junk at it and it will do magic. And it sometimes can, but it doesn't do magic reliably in that case. So you have to get down to kind of the core data. So removing like course instructions, removing quizzes. So for example, in SCORM and e-learning content, quizzes have a lot of bad information in it by design. So the last thing you want to do is summarize that and think that's actually what's discussed in the content. So there has to be some pre-processing to the data to get it into a set that is, I'll say, optimized for generating new things on top of. So we did that. We stored it technical in a vectorized database. If there are technical AI people on here, we're kind of using the embeddings strategy for how we used AI, and then we used it to generate new metadata. So we asked it to write a new description, to create learning objectives, create tags and categories, and to tag it to a pre-existing skill library. So I'm going to go ahead and click kind of the next slide, because I want to share some of the prompts that we wrote. And it might be hard to read these. I'll read parts of them out that I think are kind of important. The relatable bit of this to me that's really powerful is how approachable this is. This is the code. This is what's in there. This is what's telling the AI system what to do. Like, hey, this is part of the first part. We want you to remove course instructions, navigation, elements like that. We're telling the system that it's an expert at detailed summaries of text, and it summarized text for L&D people. We're giving it kind of that, I'll say, intern level instructions. This one's even harder to read, so I apologize. But we are putting in here, this was to write learning objectives. We said, hey, we want you to use the Bloom's learning taxonomy to do this, and we want you to follow this format. We don't want you to just come up with crazy learning objectives. We want it in a very structured, formatted way. And we even gave it an example of how we wanted it to return that. So doing these kind of steps help build kind of that reliability into the system. And this is one of my favorite instructions. This is asking it to tag to skills. We reminded it was important. Don't make up skills. Don't do it. Like, don't come up with skills. It's going to want to. It's creative like all of us. We said, nope, here's the list. You only get to choose from these. And giving it those constraints allowed us to make sure that we were tagging it to an existing skill taxonomy versus letting it be super creative in how what it came up with. So kind of fun. There's a lot of iterative process on this, things we're still tuning and kind of processing on, but this did actually return some really amazing results. So I'm going to attempt the usually ill-fated live webinar demo to show you this tool in practice.
I have faith in you, Jeff.
And we
Come
will
on,
see.
everybody wants Jeff to do this, don't we? Come on,
Everyone wants
let's have a yay for Jeff in the chat.
We can't hear them, but they're all clapping for you in the background.
They are clapping. Yeah. We're getting some yays. Come on, Stephen. That's it. Stephen's yaying for you. Come on, let's have a few yays.
All right.
Let's have the yays in the chat, people.
Yeah. All right. Can you guys see my SCORM metadata generator?
Yes.
Go, Jeff. Hell yay.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a SCORM file from the association that Gary's allowed me to have, and I'm going to send it. We need
to make it a little bit bigger. Apart from
generate some metadata. So what it's doing is it's chunking up that course right now. It's doing all the things we have. You can see it's doing its little running thing. It's going through that. It's going through all the courses. Because it's so big, it's an hour-long course, it can't do it in one chunk. So it's got to break that up. Now it's off generating that new metadata that we talked about. So it's doing the second part of that. And now it's generating the skills that are a part of it. So you'll see here the title that was in the SCO was just a crazy an ID that the association used. So it came up with a title. It came up with a short description. It detected the language for us. It wrote a longer description. It wrote learning objectives in a structured format that the association wanted. Any of my learning designers on here will appreciate the remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create kind of classics of the Bloom's taxonomy. And then it took an existing set of metadata from categories, tags, and skills and associated it to this piece of content for us. So you'll see categories, you'll see tags, and you'll see skills from that existing taxonomy. And
we've had a question. Sorry, Jeff, just pause you a second. We've had a question from David. Is it possible to make that screen any bigger at all, just so that people can see a little bit more? I appreciate this is much more about the how rather than the what, but yeah.
Yeah, if you want to, can you read it a little more now?
Is that a bit more helpful? If it helps people, you can maximize the screen yourself. There's a go full screen or click 100 on the top right of the box. The click 100 is the way to do it. There we go. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. Yeah, well done. Yeah, click 100 and there we go. And the top right corner of your screen box.
Yeah, and I can send this to people too. We can definitely do follow-ups on this. I just wanted to roll the dice and do something live and show people that this is real. This is working. This is something that we're kind of doing together. The formatting's gotten weird as I've done this, but really, really useful tool that we can load pretty much any SCORM package or PDF or anything into, and it's building out those tags for us. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. I have some screenshots in here too of it, so people can zoom in on it later themselves as well. But what this did was it drove that discoverability of the content. This was able to help people now find and get to the content that was relevant. And at the association level, Gary, I imagine it helped you sell more content too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that's remarkable about this is anybody that's in learning design knows how long this aspect, especially retroactively going through courses to do this, right? It's a little easier when you're designing a course up front to think of these as you're moving forward. But like Jeff said, with 3,000 products in the mix, to have somebody go through there and re-tag them, like we just didn't have that bandwidth. And this tool has made it incredibly easy for users to go in and be able to find the courses that they're looking for, right? There's a lot of content in tax and audit, right? So if I'm looking for specific content in a very kind of niche audit market, if I was only able to narrow it down to audit content, it would take me as the learner the time to go through those course descriptions to figure out exactly what I was looking for. This essentially eliminates that. So you can imagine how, if we look at the time on screen or the time on window before you cart something, that process was reduced exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely. It all is down to user experience again, like getting people to the content they need that's relevant to them faster. couple other kind of things that I think excited now that we did the hard work of building that database of truth of the content. We have that vectorized data set. Now you can think of like asking ChatGPT to like do other things for me. Maybe we need to generate some new images, like thumbnails, compelling imagery to it, some new modalities. Like hey, based on that course, write me a script for a podcast, build me some assessments, study guides, recommend things. So deconstructing the content has only primed us to our theme here of doing things that future-proof us, have primed us to, as the organization is ready to embrace using AI in different ways, to start to do it off of a trusted source of truth of database than just the standard GPT model that's out there. So I think that was kind of really important. Gary, anything you want to add here about the excitement around kind of what we're doing next?
Yeah, I mean, there's really endless applications that we're trying to play with now. This being a huge component of it, but everything that you have listed on the screen, like creating supplemental material to support learning objects that are already there, creating derivative content from content that we already have. The lift for that has become far easier, and having a SME validate the content rather than create the content as we move forward with this reduces time and reduces our costs.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a question around the process of this, and so Christopher, absolutely, we did this in an iterative. We started with 5, we started with 5, 10. We kind of iterated it up to build confidence with the tuning of the model. We didn't really tune the model, but of the prompts that we were using to do that, and kind of work through it. Some of the people as part of the team were from the pharma industry, and they kind of applied similar processes to how you do quality control on pills that come out in a way. Like you can't go taste them all, or in any of those kind of things. So how do you apply similar processes to reviewing that content that you know the inputs, you know the process, and you spot check the outputs to give you comfort that it's not coming up, it's not doing crazy things. But also, I will say that this is one of those lower risk use cases. Even if we happen to tag something wrong, it's not the end of the world. Like someone might report that in the UI and then we go change it manually. Like it's not teaching anyone wrong. That's why these other ones, these new things are kind of future ones, because we do have to practice and iterate and figure out how we build more trust. But the trust around metadata we found was a much lower level. Like people were okay if it happened to add one wrong tag to it, or a tag that was quasi not relevant, because that was an easy thing for us to correct, and it didn't really kind of mess with anyone too much. Gary, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's kind of where that's I think why we kind of gravitated to that use case first over let's just rebuild all the content using AI from scratch.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
little
And
more intimidating.
the tagging has not produced any technical tagging errors. It's more on the kind of like softer success skills. Like, do we talk about leadership in this program? Probably, but like, would I consider it a leadership course? Not necessarily. And we can go in and manually adjust those tags if as needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the screenshots of this. I think there was a question around personalization. So to me, where we're heading towards is using tools like this to be able to personalize or adapt the content to the unit of one. Because if we can get it good enough that it knows that Jeff needs to consume this content and I have this much time and this is my preferred modality and format, it could generate that on the fly for me. And to me, that's one of the, like, I get goosebumps when I say that out loud when we can get there. I don't think we're there yet, but I am very excited about it. And Gary, maybe I know we're running short on time, but maybe you can hit a little bit on how we're thinking about using AI to personalize learning journeys as well. Now that we have that, we can start to recommend and build these journeys out. But maybe if you have a couple minutes, I think this kind of helps bring home another one of those examples of how we're using it to help build learning journeys.
Yeah, and I can I'll skip to the good parts.
Yeah.
with dynamic learning journeys, what we really wanted to do was kind of like create multimodal learning experiences, and allow us. In the past with our systems, we were unable to provide learners meaningful learning pathways with mixed use content. So what we're looking and exploring to now, like right now, we're developing these manualities for kind of like upskilling and defined learning journeys. What we're looking to leverage the AI now is, can we create personalized learning journeys for an individual by using our wealth of content in our library and creating pieces that are relevant to that user's journey. So, I'm an auditor that really needs to understand the new variations of SAS 145. So maybe I just need that little snippet from this content to be put in here. But what I also need is some data analytics to be able to describe my findings better, or some data visualization skills. And I also need, I really want to listen to this podcast where a Big Four firm talked about how they're implementing all of those things into their daily practice. We can create a learning journey through the AI that would give available options for somebody to create that personalized learning pathway. We struggle at this point with regulations for continuing education requirements to do in-course adaptivity, which I think future down the road would be a next iteration. But upfront adaptivity, where we can create these personalized learning journeys, is really where we're looking at, and allows us to remain current. These courses, especially courses in data analytics, courses, anything that we would do in AI, right, might have a shelf life of 3 months. Right. So if we can plug and play the components of those courses easier and tag them in a way that allow us to swap out content that might not be as current with new content in a seamless manner, we can always keep our content current. Also highly customizable. If a client comes to us and says, "Hey, we love that dynamic learning journey that you've created as a product for our company. What we'd love to do is put in some of our own content. What we would love to do is take out your podcast and put in our podcast." It's really what we're looking at now, in the way that we can use these disparate forms of content. Before it was kind of like you would package it in a course, right? You would take your course and you would take thumbnails of our white papers or something like that. Now we can have a course next to a podcast through the journey function with a video, standalone video, and a white paper, all in a single seamless experience.
Gary, this is a quote that I put that you said to me when we were talking about it, and I think it's a good way to start to wrap up here as we head into the Q&A area, because it rings true no matter how we think about it. Do you want to share a little around your thoughts on kind of why we should put your name under this, like, because this was the Gary quote?
Every now and then I have moments of brilliance. But it was really, as we started looking at what we can do with AI, and when we started this discussion and started this journey, we had no clue where AI was going to take us in a few months. And the mistakes that a lot of companies have had when they took digital transformation is they move forward with a moment in time. I was so thankful that when we started this partnership, that we were able to have the flexibility to adapt, because our end goal is changing as the technology changes. So if my advice was to make decisions now that can be flexible as your end goal changes as well, right? And we've been able to do that. We've been able to pivot, and we've been able to progress in a way that allowed us to change that end goal, and we weren't trapped behind 2-year-old technology.
Absolutely. I love it. I'll leave it there because our last slide is a thank you. But we made it, Andrew. We got there. We have a minute or two for questions if you see any that are in there that are primed. But we really appreciate everyone's time today. Like, time is all you have. So
absolutely.
Thank you for spending it with us.
Really, really good chat. And there are a couple of questions. So you picked up a couple of them I'm interested in one from Paul. How do you limit the AI to just the client's content and courses? How do you stop it from going outside and pulling in stuff which has been identified from Becky that isn't relevant?
Yeah, That's the technical approach of what we call kind of embeddings or prompt stuffing, and where we use that vectorized data set. So you tell it, you say, hey, use this vector of data only, and you can apply your language abilities to that to understand it, to generate new things, but don't use your knowledge, use just this knowledge, and you give it to it. So that's the technical concepts is embeddings or kind of prompt stuffing, and that's how we're accomplishing that and making sure that, one, we're not training the model on association data as well, and that it's only doing stuff based off of that data.
Excellent. I can see you've got more questions coming in. I can see Carl's typing. Carl's got a question in there. I can see that I was typing. I can see Ed is typing questions as well. There's more questions going in. Unfortunately, we haven't got time, I'm afraid. Really great, guys. Really do appreciate it. You can download the case study. You'll find on the link on the left-hand side of the page, there's a link to the case study. Click on that, put your details on, and you'll be able to get a copy of the case study. There's also the GP Strategies AI Resources page, as mentioned before, so thank you again for pointing us towards that. And you can find Jeff and Gary and my LinkedIn details if you want to connect with us. And I highly recommend connecting with Jeff and Gary just so you can carry these questions through. So thank you very much, guys. Really do appreciate it. And thank you again, as I always say to the audience, these sessions only work when we're engaging with them, and some really useful conversation with everybody. So thank you, everyone, for your comments. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another of the LSG webinar series. Brilliant to see you all, and take care, everybody, and we'll catch you again soon.
Thank you all. It was a great session.